There is a plant growing across 6 continents that contains 5 times more magnesium than spinach, more than any supplement capsule, and more than any fortified cereal on the market. It produces 70,000 seeds per plant, and those seeds remain alive in the soil for 40 years. Ancient bog bodies were found with it still preserved inside their stomachs. Yet the Western world classified it as a weed. The supplement industry generates nearly $7 billion annually selling magnesium pills. Meanwhile, this plant grows in sidewalk cracks. By the end of this discussion, you will know exactly why a plant more nutritious than anything in your grocery store ended up on agriculture's most wanted list, and how to never pay for magnesium again. Walk into any traditional kitchen in northern India during winter and watch the families prepare their morning meal. They will cook dark green leaves with a dusty white coating into curries and flatbreads called parathas. This is not spinach. This is not kale. This is bathua. And over 300 million people across South Asia eat it every single week. In the Himalayan foothills of Nepal, they call it bethu. Farmers there consider it essential winter nutrition. In Turkey, villagers call it ak sirken. They have gathered it from wild places for generations beyond memory. In rural Mexico, traditional cooks call it quilit. They fold it into tamales and stir it into soups. Here is the first clue that something went wrong. You know spinach, you know kale, you know arugula, and Swiss chard, and collard greens. These vegetables sit in every Western grocery store. But this plant, consumed by more people than all those greens combined, does not exist in Western consciousness. Most Americans have never heard any of its names. The problem begins with fragmentation. Indians call it bathua. Nepalese call it bethu. Turks call it ak sirken. Mexicans call it quelite. British farmers once called it fat hen. American botanists call it Chenopodium album, dozens of names for one plant. No unified identity in Western languages. When a plant has no consistent name, it has no consistent presence in cookbooks, in databases, or in research funding proposals. The fragmentation was not intentional, but the result was erasure. Compare this to cilantro. Same plant as coriander, different name for leaves versus seeds. But Western food culture unified these names. Everyone knows cilantro. It appears in every grocery store. This ancient plant never received that unification. It remained foreign in each separate encounter. Never familiar, never integrated, never understood. Now consider the official designation. This plant feeds hundreds of millions of people. Ancient civilizations cultivated it for thousands of years. It ranks among the top 5 most widespread agricultural weeds on Earth. Food in one country, poison classification in another. The same leaves that Indian grandmothers cook into family dinners are the same leaves that American farmers spray with herbicides. When did growing without permission become a crime? The ancient record tells a completely different story. To understand how this happened, we need to travel back, not decades, not centuries, but millennia. In 1950, Danish workers cutting peat from a bog near the village of Tolland discovered something that would change archaeology forever. They found a human body so perfectly preserved that they initially called the police, thinking they had discovered a recent murder victim. The body belonged to a man who had died over 2,400 years ago. Scientists named him Tolland Man. His face remained so intact that you can still see his closed eyes, his furrowed brow, and the stubble on his chin. He looked like he was sleeping. But scientists were most interested in something else, his stomach. In 2021, researchers from the Danish National Museum conducted the most detailed analysis ever performed on Tolland Man's last meal. They used advanced microscopy and lipid analysis to identify exactly what he ate in the hours before his death. The results filled pages of the scientific journal Antiquity: barley, pale persicaria, flax seeds, wild buckwheat, and one plant appeared in higher concentrations than any other grain or seed. The plant we are discussing today filled his stomach. It was not a weed to him. It was food, intentionally cultivated, harvested food. Toland man was not alone. Another bog body discovered nearby, called graubaul man, showed the same dietary pattern, same plants, same intentional cultivation, same evidence of a food system we had forgotten existed. The examination of stomach contents from Iron Age human bodies preserved in northern European peat bogs reveals that this plant's leaves and seeds were harvested and consumed over 3,000 years ago. This was not foraging, this was agriculture. But Europe was not the only place where humans recognized this plant's value. 5,000 miles west, an entirely separate civilization made the same discovery independently. In the river valleys of eastern North America, something remarkable happened approximately 5,000 years ago. Indigenous peoples began intentionally planting and cultivating members of the goosefoot family. They selected for larger seeds. They developed storage techniques. They created trade networks. By 3,800 years before the present, at least 5 domesticated seed-bearing plants formed a coherent agricultural complex in the corridor of rivers stretching from modern-day Missouri to Ohio. This plant's relatives were central to that system. Archaeologists call this the Eastern Agricultural Complex. It predates the arrival of maize from Mexico by nearly 2,000 years. For millennia, Native American civilizations grew wealthy and populous on crops that modern Americans call weeds. At Russell Cave in Alabama, archaeologists found direct evidence of this forgotten agriculture. Seeds from the Chenopodium family were stored intentionally and cultivated systematically. This was not a minor food source. This was a staple crop. 3 separate domestication events occurred: the Andes Mountains of South America, the highlands of central Mexico, and the woodlands of eastern North America. 3 independent civilizations looked at this plant and reached the same conclusion. This is valuable. This is worth cultivating. And this feeds our people. And here is perhaps the most revealing connection of all. You have heard of quinoa, the ancient Andean superfood that now costs $8 per pound at health food stores, the grain that Instagram influencers add to their smoothie bowls, and the seed that generates hundreds of millions in annual sales. Quinoa is Chenopodium quinoa. The plant we are discussing is Chenopodium album. They are close relatives, the same genus with similar nutritional profiles. Recent studies published in the Journal of Food Composition and Analysis compared them directly. The results shocked researchers. Chenopodium album demonstrated superior nutraceutical and amino acid profiles compared to quinoa. The weed outperforms the superfood. The free plant beats the expensive one, and almost no one in the Western world has ever heard of it. The plant is called lamb's quarters. That is its most common American name, Chenopodium album. This is the most nutritious plant you have never been told about. Let me show you what modern science has confirmed about its composition. In a 100-gram serving of raw lamb's quarters leaves, you receive 96% of your daily vitamin C requirements, 73% of your vitamin A, 37% of your riboflavin, 37% of your manganese, and 31% of your calcium. All of this for only 43 calories. Compare this to spinach, the green that nutritionists celebrate. Lamb's quarters contains approximately 2 times more vitamin B1, 2 times more vitamin B2, 3 times more vitamin C, and 3 times more calcium. Compare it to kale, the vegetable that launched 1,000 wellness brands. Lamb's quarters contains about 2.5 times more vitamin A than kale. It is richer in protein, richer in fiber, and richer in most minerals that matter. But the real treasure is the mineral content. Research published by the United States Botanic Garden compared wild edible species to common grocery store vegetables. They tested lamb's quarters against lettuce, spinach, and cabbage. The results demand attention. Lamb's quarters contains more than twice as much potassium as those commercial greens, and 3 times as much calcium. And here is the number that changes everything: 5 times as much magnesium. 5 times more magnesium than spinach, 5 times more than lettuce, and 5 times more than cabbage. No pill, no supplement, no expensive powder, just leaves that grow in garden beds, in sidewalk cracks, and in disturbed soil across 6 continents. The protein content tells its own story. Fresh lamb's quarters leaves contain 4.3% protein per 100 grams, higher than most leafy greens. But dry the seeds, and the numbers become remarkable. Research published in Food Science and Nutrition found protein content in lamb's quarter seeds ranging from 16.6% to 19.7%, comparable to many legumes and better than most grains. And here is what makes the mineral content particularly valuable. Many leafy greens contain high levels of oxalic acid. Oxalates bind to minerals like calcium and magnesium, reducing how much your body can actually absorb. Spinach is notorious for this. It looks nutritious on paper, but oxalates steal much of that value. Research on Chenopodium species found something different. Considering the high percentage of magnesium and the ratio of oxalic acid to calcium plus magnesium, lamb's quarters had lower interference ratios than beet or spinach. It has better bioavailability. More of what you eat actually reaches your cells. The supplement industry does not want you to understand this distinction. They sell isolated magnesium compounds, magnesium oxide, magnesium citrate, magnesium glycinate. Each has different absorption rates, and each requires additional purchases when bottles run empty. Plant-form magnesium comes with cofactors, enzymes, fiber, and complementary nutrients that evolution designed to work together. Your body recognizes food. It does not always recognize pills. But nutrition alone does not explain why this plant was erased from Western consciousness. The real answer lies in something even more remarkable, something that threatens the economic model of modern food production. Lamb's quarters produces an average of 72,000 seeds per plant. Some specimens produce over 100,000. Under ideal conditions, researchers have documented plants producing up to 500,000 seeds. A single well-established patch can release 50 million seeds per hectare. Those numbers are difficult to comprehend, so let me make them concrete. One lamb's quarters plant in your backyard this summer will produce enough seeds to plant an entire neighborhood. And you do not need to do anything. The plant disperses its own seeds. It requires no intervention, no collection, no storage, and no replanting. But here is what transforms abundance into permanence. Those seeds do not die. Studies on seed longevity found that lamb's quarters seeds remain viable in soil for 12 to 78 years. One study documented 32% germination rates after 20 years of burial. Another found viable seeds after 40 years. Think about what this means. Your great-grandmother could have planted lamb's quarters once, done nothing else, and you could harvest from her original planting today. The plant also adapts to almost any condition. Research published in PLOS 1 documented remarkable germination under a wide range of environmental conditions combined with exceptional tolerance to abiotic stress. Maximum germination of 94% occurred at optimal temperatures, but the plant successfully germinated under drought conditions, high salinity, and poor soil quality. It grows in light soil, medium soil, heavy soil, acidic soil, alkaline soil, sandy soil, and clay soil. From USDA hardiness zone 3 to zone 10, from Scandinavia to South Africa, from sea level to high mountain valleys, this is what resilience looks like. Not fragile seedlings requiring constant attention, not hybrid varieties demanding specific fertilizers, but a plant that establishes itself and returns indefinitely. requiring no infrastructure and building permanent food systems. Now consider what this means for existing industries. Buy seed once, plant once, harvest forever. What happens to seed company revenue when a crop perpetuates itself? What happens when customers never need to purchase again? The global seed industry generates over $60 billion annually. Corn, soybeans, wheat, cotton. These crops require new seed purchases every planting season. Many modern varieties are hybrids that do not breed true. Some are patented. The business model depends entirely on repetition. Lamb's Quarters breaks this model. It refuses to participate in annual transactions. It cannot be controlled. It cannot generate recurring revenue. From an industry perspective, this plant is worthless. Worse than worthless, it is competition. The supplement industry faces the same problem. The global magnesium supplement market reached $3.5 billion in 2023. Projections show growth to nearly $7 billion by 2032. This growth depends on one thing: continued magnesium deficiency. Government statistics reveal that nearly 90% of American adults are not meeting recommended dietary intake for magnesium. Some studies suggest that as much as half the total population is clinically deficient. This deficiency creates demand. Demand creates markets. Markets require products. Lamb's Quarters threatens every link in this chain. A plant that provides 5 times more magnesium than spinach, that grows without cultivation, and that self-seeds forever costs nothing after initial establishment. This is not a product, this is a solution. And solutions are bad for business. The research funding patterns reveal the structure clearly. Search PubMed, the database of medical literature. Search for fish oil studies. You will find over 15,000 results. Search for magnesium supplement studies, thousands more. Now, search for Chenopodium album nutritional research. A few hundred studies, most conducted in India, Nepal, or Pakistan, and almost none funded by Western institutions. Scientific papers repeatedly use the same word to describe this plant: neglected. The nutritional characteristics of the neglected species Chenopodium album. That word appears again and again in the literature. Neglect is not a conspiracy. No shadowy meetings occurred where executives decided to suppress Lamb's Quarters. No memos circulated demanding its erasure. The mechanism was simpler. Economic systems see what benefits economic systems. Research follows funding. Funding follows patents. Patents require control. Lamb's Quarters cannot be controlled. It self-seeds. It spreads. It naturalizes. It becomes wild. It becomes free. What cannot be owned cannot be sold. What cannot be sold cannot be marketed. What cannot be marketed does not enter consciousness. The weed classification completed the erasure. Agricultural Extension Services describe Lamb's Quarters as one of the more competitive weeds in row crop production. Studies document 13% yield loss in corn with just one Lamb's Quarters plant per 1.5 feet of row, and 25% yield loss in soybeans. From the perspective of industrial monoculture, this is a threat. Diversity is inefficiency. Spontaneous growth is chaos. The same traits that make Lamb's Quarters valuable as food make it problematic for uniform commodity production. Herbicide manufacturers need enemies. Lamb's Quarters became a target. Billions of dollars of chemicals are designed to kill a plant that feeds people. The same pattern appeared with white clover. For 80 years, American lawn seed mixes contained clover because it fertilizes soil naturally. Then herbicide companies needed peacetime markets. They removed clover from seed mixes. They sold poison to kill what they had previously sold as beneficial. No one suppressed Lamb's Quarters through active conspiracy. The system simply forgot, or rather, it remembered only what could be monetized. But the plant does not care about monetization. It does not care about quarterly earnings or shareholder value or market capitalization. It cares about reproduction. It cares about survival. It cares about spreading wherever soil and sunlight permit. And it has been waiting in soil seed banks across 6 continents, in disturbed ground near construction sites, in backyard gardens where no one has sprayed herbicide, in cracks of city sidewalks, in vacant lots, and in the margins between what we cultivate and what we ignore. The health consequences of ignoring this plant extend far beyond simple nutrition. Magnesium deficiency has become one of the most widespread mineral deficiencies in the developed world. Your body uses magnesium for over 300 enzymatic reactions: muscle function, nerve transmission, blood sugar regulation, blood pressure control, protein synthesis, and energy production. When magnesium runs low, everything suffers. Muscle cramps appear first, then fatigue that sleep does not fix, then anxiety without obvious cause, irregular heartbeat, migraines, and difficulty sleeping. The symptoms are so common that most people assume they are simply part of modern life. Doctors rarely test for magnesium deficiency. Standard blood tests measure serum magnesium, but only 1% of your body's magnesium exists in blood. The other 99% hides in bones and soft tissues. You can be severely deficient while blood tests show normal levels. Meanwhile, modern agriculture has stripped magnesium from soil. Industrial farming does not replace trace minerals. Crops grow faster but contain less nutrition. Studies comparing vegetables from 1950 to today show dramatic mineral declines. The spinach your grandmother ate contained more magnesium than the spinach you buy now. This creates a perfect storm. Depleted soil produces depleted food. Depleted food produces depleted bodies. Depleted bodies create demand for supplements. Supplements create profits. Profits fund more research on supplements. The cycle reinforces itself. Lamb's quarters breaks this cycle because it grows where other plants struggle. It thrives in marginal soil. It pulls minerals from depths that shallow-rooted vegetables cannot reach. Its deep taproot accesses nutrients that modern crops miss entirely. The plant concentrates what the soil still contains. In urban environments, this becomes even more valuable. City soils are often disturbed, compacted, and seemingly hostile to agriculture. But lamb's quarters sees opportunity where other plants see obstacles. It colonizes construction sites. It emerges from gravel parking lots. It pushes through cracks where organic matter accumulates. Urban foragers across America have begun to rediscover this abundance. In Detroit, community gardens that embrace wild edibles report harvesting hundreds of pounds of lamb's quarters each season. In Los Angeles, immigrant communities from Mexico and Central America recognize quilite immediately and wonder why their American neighbors ignore it. In New York City, foraging tours now include lamb's quarters identification as a standard lesson. The pattern repeats across Europe as well. In Poland, traditional cooks still prepare lamb's quarters as komosa biała. In Germany, older generations remember it as Weißer Gänsefuß. In Greece, rural villages maintain knowledge of litita preparation methods passed down through centuries. The knowledge exists. It merely became disconnected from mainstream awareness. Reconnection requires only attention. History reveals that lamb's quarters has served as famine food during humanity's darkest hours. During World War II, families across occupied Europe survived on plants that grew without cultivation. When supply lines collapsed and farms lay abandoned, lamb's quarters emerged from disturbed soil and fed the hungry. Survivors in the Netherlands during the hunger winter of 1944 to 1945 ate whatever grew wild. This plant grew wild everywhere. The same pattern appeared during the Great Depression in America. Rural families who remembered old knowledge foraged what others ignored. They stretched meager resources with free greens that required no purchase. The plant asked nothing in return, no money, no labor, no infrastructure, just recognition. In China, historical records document lamb's quarters consumption during countless famines stretching back millennia. The plant appears in ancient agricultural texts as a reliable backup when rice harvests failed. Peasant farmers knew that this green would appear when everything else disappeared. This history carries a lesson we have forgotten. Resilience does not come from complexity. It comes from simplicity, from plants that do not need us, from food systems that function when everything else fails. Our ancestors understood this. They maintained relationships with wild plants precisely because civilization sometimes collapses. We have traded that resilience for convenience, for plastic-wrapped vegetables shipped from distant continents, for supplements manufactured in factories, and for the illusion that grocery stores will always remain stocked. The pandemic revealed how fragile these assumptions are. Empty shelves appeared within days. Supply chains buckled under pressure. The knowledge to reclaim this abundance is simple. Identification requires no expertise. Look for the distinctive mealy white coating on young leaves, like someone sprinkled flour across the surface. The leaves are triangular or diamond-shaped, roughly 3 to 7 centimeters long on mature plants. The edges have irregular teeth. Upper leaves appear waxy and unwettable. The dusty coating washes off easily. Beneath it, the leaves look like any cooking green, dark green on top, sometimes purplish underneath. Dense clusters of tiny green flowers appear on spikes as the plant matures. Similar plants exist. The aurochs species most commonly get confused with lamb's quarters. But here is the important fact: those are also edible. The confusion poses no danger. You might end up with slightly saltier greens. You will not end up poisoned. Cultivation is almost unnecessary. The plant appears spontaneously in most gardens. Stop pulling it out. That is the entire cultivation secret. If you want to establish a patch deliberately, scatter seeds on disturbed soil in spring after the last frost. Water occasionally until established, then step back. The plant requires nothing else. Harvest the young leaves when plants are 6 to 8 inches tall. This is when they are most tender. You can continuously harvest throughout the growing season by taking the top growth. New leaves regenerate within days. The young shoots can be eaten raw. Add them to salads. The flavor is mild, slightly mineral, with a hint of spinach. The leaves are preferably cooked. Treat them exactly as you would treat spinach. Sauté with garlic, add to soups, fold into omelets, or blend into smoothies. The flower buds and young flowers are also edible when cooked. They add texture and a slightly different flavor. For seed harvest, wait until late summer or autumn when the seed heads turn dark and dry. Strip the clusters into a container. Winnow lightly by pouring seeds between 2 containers in a breeze. The chaff blows away. Toast the cleaned seeds lightly before eating, grind them into flour, or boil them into porridge. One note about preparation. Like spinach and many leafy greens, lamb's quarters contains oxalates. For most people, this poses no problem. But if you have kidney stone concerns or eat very large quantities regularly, brief blanching reduces oxalate levels. Pour boiling water over leaves, let sit for 2 minutes, then drain. The oxalates dissolve into the water you discard. Store dried seeds in airtight containers. They remain viable for years. This is your insurance against uncertain futures. Seeds that require no electricity, no supply chains, and no functioning stores, just dry storage and patience. Consider what food security actually means. Grocery store shelves can empty within hours during emergencies. Supply chains stretch across oceans and depend on fuel, electricity, and political stability. The average meal travels over 1,500 miles before reaching your plate. Every link in that chain represents a potential failure point. Now imagine a different model: food that grows without replanting, nutrition that requires no purchase, seeds that wait patiently underground for decades, and a harvest that regenerates within days of cutting. This is not a fantasy. This is lamb's quarters. This is what our ancestors understood before we forgot. The climate crisis makes this knowledge even more urgent. Droughts are intensifying across agricultural regions. Heat waves are destroying conventional crops. Water tables are dropping. Irrigation is becoming more expensive. The industrial food system that replaced traditional knowledge is showing cracks. Lamb's quarters thrives under exactly these conditions: heat tolerance, drought resistance, and the ability to grow in poor soil. This plant evolved for the world we are creating. It prepared for conditions that our pampered crops cannot survive. Every garden that maintains a lamb's quarters patch holds insurance against uncertain harvests. The real question is not whether you should grow lamb's quarters, it grows itself. The question is whether you will recognize it when it appears, whether you will see food or see a weed. 3,000 years ago, a man in Denmark ate this plant for his final meal. His body, preserved in peat, shows us what he valued. 5,000 years ago, Native American farmers cultivated its relatives as dietary staples. Their seeds, preserved in cave sediments, show us what they knew. This knowledge was never lost. Indian grandmothers still cook bathwa every winter. Himalayan villagers still gather bethu from wild slopes. Mexican cooks still fold quelite into traditional dishes. The wisdom survived everywhere except where industrial agriculture and supplement marketing achieved total dominance. The supplement industry will not tell you about this plant. There is no profit in pointing you toward free nutrition. The seed industry will not promote it. You cannot sell annual products when a single planting lasts forever. The agricultural establishment will not celebrate it. You cannot spray herbicides on food crops. But the seeds do not read market reports. They do not track stock prices. They do not attend board meetings. They have been sitting in your soil for decades, waiting for disturbance, waiting for light, waiting for someone to stop poisoning them and start harvesting them instead. The seeds have been waiting in the soil for 40 years. The question is whether you will be ready when they finally decide to grow. If this story changed how you look at the weeds in your garden, please subscribe and like the channel. We are uncovering the history they tried to bury. Plant the future. The next treasure will be revealed soon.